My parents funded my sister's luxury lifestyle while I struggled to pay rent. Then she showed up at my door. For my entire life, I was the invisible child in our house. My younger sister, Chloe, was the undisputed star of the family. Don't miss what happens next. Subscribe now and comment where you're watching from. Let's find out how far this incredible story goes. If Chloe wanted a new laptop for school, my parents would gladly work extra hours to buy it. If Chloe wanted to spend her summer traveling across Europe to find herself, my parents would take money out of their own retirement savings. I was always told to be the responsible one. I was the child who never asked for anything because I already knew what the answer would be. My parents always said money was tight, but somehow they always found enough for Chloe. They told me I needed to learn how to be independent, because Chloe was just more delicate and needed extra support. So, I learned to be independent. I stopped asking for help. I stayed quiet, kept my head down, and focused entirely on my own survival. While Chloe was out living a life of pure luxury, I was preparing for the real world. It hurt to see them favor her so openly, but it also made me strong. I knew that when the time came, I would only have myself to rely on. And I was completely right about that. When I turned 18, I packed my few belongings into garbage bags and left home. I rented a tiny, cramped studio apartment on the bad side of town. The walls were thin, and it always smelled faintly of old onions, but it was mine. To pay for it, I worked 2 jobs. I waited tables at a diner during the day and stocked shelves at a grocery store at night. I lived off instant noodles and tap water for years. Whenever rent was due, a knot of pure panic would form in my stomach. A few times when I was absolutely desperate and facing eviction, I called my parents to ask for a tiny loan. The answer was always a firm no. My mother would tell me that I needed to figure it out on my own, while I could hear Chloe laughing in the background. It was a bitter reality, but I accepted it. I cut my contact with them down to the bare minimum. I poured all my anger and resentment into my career. I was determined to never feel that kind of desperate panic again. I was going to build a solid life for myself no matter what it took. Over the next 6 years, my hard work finally started to pay off. I clawed my way up the corporate ladder at a marketing firm, going from a simple intern to a senior director. My salary multiplied, but my lifestyle stayed exactly the same. I kept living in that same cheap apartment, driving an old beat-up car, and saving every single penny I made. I lived like I was broke, even when my bank account started to look very healthy. I built a fortress of financial stability, and I kept it completely hidden from my family. I knew that if my parents or Chloe found out I had money, they would suddenly want to be a part of my life. I wanted peace, not a relationship built on my bank account. I didn't post on social media. I didn't wear fancy clothes. I just quietly watched my savings grow. While Chloe was posting pictures of her designer bags and expensive vacations online, I was securing my future. I was finally happy. I had created a safe, quiet world where no one could hurt me or let me down. I thought my fortress was completely untouchable. I was very wrong. The ultimate reward for all my secret saving was finally within my reach. After years of careful planning, I found my absolute dream house. It was a beautiful 4-bedroom property in a quiet, safe neighborhood with a large backyard and a stunning kitchen. It was everything I had ever wanted as a child but never had. I put in an offer, and it was accepted immediately because my finances were in perfect order. My credit score was flawless. I was exactly 1 week away from signing the final closing documents and getting the keys. I was so excited I could barely sleep at night. I had kept this massive secret from everyone, especially my family. I planned to move in quietly and just enjoy the peace of my own beautiful space. I even bought a few nice pieces of furniture to celebrate. Everything was going exactly according to my plan. My life was finally perfect, and I was so proud of what I had accomplished all by myself. But life has a funny way of ruining your plans when you least expect it. My perfect, quiet world was about to be shattered by the one person I had tried so hard to avoid. It all started on a cold, rainy Tuesday evening. The rain was pouring down heavily, tapping against the thin windows of my small apartment. I was sitting on my old couch, reviewing some final paperwork for the house, feeling incredibly relaxed. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. It was a sharp, loud sound that made me jump. Nobody ever visited me unannounced, especially not at this time of night. A strange feeling of dread washed over me. I walked over to the door and looked through the small peephole. I completely froze. Standing there on my cheap welcome mat was my sister, Chloe. She was wearing a very expensive designer trench coat, and she looked incredibly annoyed. Clustered around her on the wet floor were 4 massive, overstuffed luxury suitcases. She kept huffing and checking her phone, looking like she was deeply offended by the rain. I couldn't believe my eyes. I hadn't seen her in person for over 2 years. Why was she here? How did she even remember my address? My mind raced with a million questions. I took a deep breath, braced myself for whatever was about to happen, and slowly unlocked the front door. The metal lock clicked loudly in the quiet hallway. I pulled the door open and Chloe didn't even say hello. She just rolled her eyes, pushed past me and walked right into my living room. "Finally," she complained loudly. "Do you know how long I was standing out there? The driver absolutely refused to carry my bags up the stairs." She stopped in the middle of my small room, her eyes darting over my worn-out furniture and the chipped paint on the walls. Her nose crinkled in pure disgust, as if she had just stepped into a garbage dump. "Wow," she breathed out. "It is really small in here. Are you going to get my bags inside? Or are you just going to stand there staring at me?" I was completely speechless for a moment. "Chloe, what are you doing here?" I finally asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She dropped her heavy designer handbag right onto my kitchen counter. "My landlord is a total jerk," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "He evicted me just because I was a little bit behind on my rent. And Mom and Dad's credit cards keep getting declined. It is so embarrassing. So I came here." I stared at her in disbelief. She hadn't come to visit me. She had come because she was completely out of options. "So you decided to just show up at my apartment?" I asked. "Well, yeah," Chloe replied, acting like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Mom told me you still lived in this place. I didn't realize it was such a dump, but it is better than a homeless shelter, I guess." She looked around expectantly. "Where is my room?" I crossed my arms. "It is a 1-bedroom apartment, Chloe. There is no extra room for you." She blinked, genuinely confused by the idea that she couldn't have exactly what she wanted. "Well, I guess I will just take your bedroom then. You can sleep on the couch. Don't worry, I won't be here for very long. Just until I can manifest a better living situation." I should have thrown her out right then and there. I should have told her to call our parents and figure it out. But a foolish part of me felt a tiny bit of pity. I sighed heavily. "Fine. Bring your bags inside." It was the biggest mistake of my life. It took exactly 48 hours for the real nightmare to begin. Chloe immediately took over my entire living space like a greedy parasite. She treated my home like a terrible hotel and treated me like her personal servant. She complained constantly that my groceries were too cheap and healthy. She used my important work documents as coasters for her sticky iced coffees. She threw a massive temper tantrum when I told her I would not do her laundry for her. "I am your guest," she whined loudly. "You are supposed to take care of me." She spent all day lounging on my couch, watching television at maximum volume while I tried to work. She left her expensive makeup scattered all over my tiny bathroom sink. She never once offered to clean up after herself or help pay for the food she was rapidly eating. It was exhausting. But the worst part wasn't the mess. It was her endless arrogance. Even though she was broke and homeless, she still acted like she was infinitely better than me. She constantly mocked my lifestyle, totally unaware that my cheap life was a choice, not a punishment. Chloe loved to make fun of my clothes and my old car. She would film little videos for her social media followers right in my living room. She would sigh dramatically and talk about how hard it was to be roughing it, while she waited for her next big brand deal. She was using my perfectly fine home as a sad background prop to make herself look like a brave victim. "I just don't understand how you live like this," she said one evening, looking at my simple dinner of chicken and rice. "It is just so sad. You have zero ambition. If you just worked smarter, you wouldn't have to live in this cramped little box." I had to bite my tongue so hard it almost bled. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to show her my bank account balance and the pictures of the massive house I was about to buy. I wanted to wipe that smug, superior smile right off her face. But I forced myself to stay completely silent. I knew that giving her any information would only cause more trouble. I just had to survive one more week with her. I kept reminding myself that the finish line was incredibly close. In just 7 short days, I would sign the final papers, get the keys to my dream house, and leave this tiny apartment forever. I planned to pack my bags quietly while Chloe was asleep, leave the apartment keys on the counter, and vanish from her life completely. She could figure out her own problems once I was gone. The thought of that beautiful, quiet, empty house was the only thing keeping me sane. I double-checked all my emails from the mortgage broker. Everything was perfect. My down payment was ready in the bank, and my credit score was higher than it had ever been. All my years of sacrifice were finally coming together. I felt a deep sense of pride. I had done all of this without a single penny from my parents. I had built my own safety net. I was so focused on the future that I made a careless mistake in the present. I let my guard down in my own home, completely forgetting that I was currently living with a very desperate, very selfish person who believed the world owed her everything. The mistake happened on a busy Thursday afternoon. I was working from home, trying to ignore the loud music Chloe was playing in the bedroom. My boss called me with an urgent problem that required my full attention. I grabbed my phone and walked into the hallway to get better service, pacing back and forth as we talked. I was gone for maybe 20 minutes. But in my rush, I had left my work laptop completely open and unlocked on the kitchen island. Worse than that, I had left a physical folder of important documents sitting right next to it. I had been organizing my old tax returns and bank statements for the final mortgage background check. It was a goldmine of my most private, sensitive personal information, just sitting there out in the open. I didn't think anything of it. Chloe never showed any interest in my boring paperwork before. She usually couldn't even be bothered to read a simple text message all the way through. But desperate people do desperate things. And Chloe, realizing that her parents were truly out of money, was looking for a new way to fund her luxury lifestyle. When I finally finished my phone call and walked back into the kitchen, everything looked exactly the same. My laptop was still open and the folder was still sitting there. Chloe was back on the couch, scrolling through her phone, looking completely bored. I closed my laptop, put the folder away in my drawer, and didn't suspect a single thing. I had no idea that in those 20 minutes, Chloe's entire view of me had changed. She had gotten curious and snooped through the folder. She saw my bank statements. She saw the massive amount of money sitting in my savings account. She saw the pre-approval letter for the 4-bedroom house. Instead of being happy for her older sister, she was instantly consumed by a dark, ugly jealousy. How could I, the boring, invisible sister, be doing so much better than her? It completely shattered her sense of superiority. She couldn't handle the fact that I was secretly wealthy while she was sleeping on a couch. But more importantly, she saw an opportunity. She didn't just see my success. She saw a way to take it for herself. She saw my flawless credit history as her personal piggy bank. While she was snooping through my documents, she found the most dangerous piece of information of all. My official tax return form had my full social security number printed clearly at the top. She knew my birth date. She knew my current address. She had everything she needed. In her twisted mind, she probably justified what she was about to do. She probably told herself that since our parents always gave her money, I should be giving her money too. Since I had so much saved up, I owed it to her. She didn't see it as a crime. She saw it as claiming what she felt she deserved. So while I was sitting just a few feet away, Chloe began to type quietly on her phone. She wasn't just scrolling through social media anymore. She was visiting the websites of major credit card companies. She was filling out applications for premium, high-limit credit cards. But she wasn't putting her own name on the applications. She was typing in my name, my date of birth, and my social security number. She was stealing my identity right under my nose, and I was completely blind to it. Because my credit score was absolutely perfect, the applications were approved instantly. Within minutes, Chloe had access to thousands of dollars in new credit, all legally tied to my name. She requested digital versions of the cards to be sent to her phone immediately, so she wouldn't have to wait for the physical plastic cards to arrive in the mail. The speed of the modern banking system, which had helped me secure my house, was now being used as a weapon against me. Chloe didn't waste a single second. She immediately started spending. She sat on my couch, giggling quietly at her phone, while she loaded up online shopping carts. She bought a new designer handbag that cost more than my monthly rent. She bought expensive shoes, luxury makeup, and high-end clothes. She was replacing all the things she had lost when her money ran out. She was completely thrilled. She probably thought she was a genius. She assumed I wouldn't notice. For weeks, and by then she would figure out a way to smooth things over or blame it on a computer error. But a few designer bags were not enough to satisfy her massive ego. Chloe wanted something bigger. She wanted something she could show off to her friends and her followers to prove that she was still successful and wealthy. She wanted to prove that she was still the golden child, even if she had to fake it. She remembered my perfect credit score and decided to take the ultimate risk. She opened a new tab on her phone and went to the website of a luxury car dealership across town. She found a brand new shiny white Mercedes-Benz. It was the exact car she had been begging our parents to buy her for the last 2 years. She filled out the online financing application for the car. She used my stolen information to apply for a massive auto loan. She forged my digital signature, claiming that my income and my flawless credit history belonged to her. The dealership's automated system ran the credit check. The inquiry hit my credit report like a massive bomb. Because of my excellent financial history, the massive loan was quickly pre-approved. Chloe smiled brightly, locked her phone, and finally looked up at me. "I'm going to run some errands," she said sweetly. I just nodded, happy she was leaving. The next 24 hours were surprisingly peaceful. Chloe was barely at the apartment. She was out running errands, which I now know meant picking up her stolen luxury goods and finalizing the paperwork for the fraudulent car loan at the dealership. I was just relieved to have some quiet time to pack my boxes for the big move. I thought the worst part of having her here was finally over. I was completely wrong. The real explosion happened the very next afternoon. I was sitting at my kitchen island eating lunch when my cell phone started ringing frantically. The caller ID showed the name of my mortgage broker, Mr. Davis. I answered the phone with a big smile, assuming he was calling to confirm the final closing time for the house next week. "Hello, Mr. Davis," I said cheerfully. "Are we all set for Tuesday?" There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. When he finally spoke, his voice was tight and filled with panic. "What did you just do?" he asked sharply. My smile instantly vanished. "What do you mean?" I asked, my heart suddenly beating a little faster. "Your credit score," Mr. Davis said, sounding completely bewildered. "It just tanked. It dropped by over 150 points overnight." I stood up from my stool, my stomach dropping to the floor. "That is impossible," I said, my voice shaking. "I haven't bought anything. I haven't even used my credit card this week." "The credit bureau just flagged your file," he continued quickly. 2 premium credit cards were just opened and instantly maxed out. And a massive auto loan for a luxury vehicle was just approved under your name. The bank saw the sudden massive debt and panicked. "They are pulling your pre-approval for the house. The loan is frozen." I couldn't breathe. The room started to spin. All my years of working 2 jobs, eating cheap noodles, and saving every single dollar were suddenly vanishing into thin air. "No, no, no," I gasped. "That wasn't me. My identity must have been stolen." "You have to believe me, Mr. Davis." "I believe you," he said gently. "But the bank needs proof. You need to file a police report immediately and dispute the charges. If you don't clear this up in 3 days, you lose the house." I hung up the phone, my hands shaking violently. I felt like I was going to be sick. Someone had stolen my identity and destroyed my perfect credit score. Who could have done this? How did they get my information? I grabbed my keys and ran out of the apartment, desperate to get to the police station as fast as possible. I rushed down the stairs of my building and pushed open the heavy front doors. I started to run toward my old beat-up car parked on the street. But I stopped dead in my tracks. Parked right in the middle of the driveway, completely blocking the exit, was a brand new gleaming white Mercedes-Benz. It still had the temporary dealership tags on the back window. My mind struggled to process what I was seeing. Then the driver's side door opened. Chloe stepped out. She was wearing a brand new designer outfit that I recognized from a famous magazine. She looked incredibly happy, practically glowing with pride. The pieces of the puzzle suddenly slammed together in my brain with sickening clarity. The missing time with my folder. The sudden errands. The massive auto loan. My own sister had done this to me. I stood frozen on the sidewalk watching her. She hadn't noticed me yet. Chloe set up a small tripod on the hood of the shiny new Mercedes and attached her phone to it. She hit the record button and stepped back, striking a pose. She began to film a video for her followers. She twirled the fancy car keys around her finger and smiled brightly at the camera. "Hey guys," she said in her sweet, fake influencer voice. "I just wanted to hop on here and remind you that hard work really pays off. Never stop manifesting your dreams. I have been going through a really tough transition lately, but I kept my head high, and look what the universe blessed me with today. My absolute dream car." I felt a surge of pure, blinding rage bubble up inside my chest. She wasn't just stealing my money. She was using my stolen life to fuel her fake internet persona. She was completely willing to destroy my actual future just so she could pretend to be rich for a bunch of strangers online. It was the most disgusting, selfish thing I had ever witnessed in my entire life. I didn't yell. I didn't run over and attack her. The anger inside me was so intense that it actually made me completely calm. My vision tunneled. I turned around quietly, went back inside the building, and walked up the stairs to my apartment. I went straight to the kitchen drawer and pulled out my folder of documents. I flipped through the pages carefully. Sure enough, my official tax return, the one with my social security number printed clearly on top, had been moved. It was out of order. Chloe had definitely touched it. She had snooped, found my most sensitive data, and used it to commit serious financial fraud. The old version of me would have started crying. The old me would have called our parents in tears, begging them to make her stop. And I knew exactly what my parents would do. They would tell me to calm down. They would say that Chloe just made a mistake and that I shouldn't ruin her life over a silly car. They would beg me to just accept the massive debt to protect their precious golden child. But I was not that weak, invisible girl anymore. I was done playing their game. I sat down at my small kitchen table, opened my laptop and went completely ice cold. I didn't shed a single tear. Instead, I started gathering every piece of evidence I could find. I logged into my credit monitoring service and printed out the massive alerts showing the new credit cards and the massive auto loan. I printed out the timestamps of when the inquiries were made. Then I picked up my phone and called the local police department. I told the dispatcher that I needed to file an urgent, formal report for felony identity theft and major financial fraud. Because the dollar amount of the stolen funds was so high, they promised to send 2 officers to my apartment immediately to take my official statement. After I hung up with the police, I made one more phone call. I dialed my mother's number. When she answered, I kept my voice light and pleasant. "Hi, Mom," I said cheerfully. "I was wondering if you and Dad could come over for dinner tonight. Chloe is here, and I think we need to have a family meeting to discuss her permanent living situation." My mother eagerly agreed, completely unaware of the trap I was setting. 2 hours later, the police officers arrived quietly at my door. I showed them all the printed documents, the credit alerts, and the forged loan applications. I gave them Chloe's full name and explained that she was currently out driving the stolen vehicle. They took my official statement, gave me a police report number to give to my bank, and told me they would be waiting outside the building. Once they left, I set the table for 3 people. I placed a thick manila folder right in the center of the table. At 6 o'clock sharp, there was a knock on the door. My parents had arrived. They looked incredibly exhausted. The years of constantly bailing Chloe out of trouble and paying for her lavish lifestyle had clearly taken a heavy physical toll on them. They looked older and deeply stressed. A few minutes later, the front door opened again and Chloe walked in. She was carrying expensive shopping bags and humming a happy tune. She looked completely shocked to see our parents sitting at my small dining table, but she quickly recovered and put on a bright, fake smile. "Mom, Dad, what are you doing here?" she asked loudly. "Your sister invited us," my father said tiredly, rubbing his eyes. "She said we needed to discuss your living situation." Chloe rolled her eyes and crossed her arms. "Well, good. Because I cannot live in this tiny, depressing dump forever," she whined, gesturing around my home. "I need a proper place. And actually, I just got a brand new Mercedes today, so I absolutely need an apartment with a secure, private parking garage. You guys need to co-sign a new luxury lease for me right now." My parents looked at her, completely sick to their stomachs. "A Mercedes?" my mother whispered, her voice trembling. "Chloe, how on earth did you get a Mercedes?" We don't have any money left to give you. Our credit is completely ruined. Chloe just smirked and flipped her hair over her shoulder. Oh, you don't need to worry about the money, Mom. It is called manifesting. I put good energy out into the universe, and the universe finally rewarded me. I stood up from my chair slowly and stared right into her eyes. Actually, I interrupted, my voice dead calm and echoing in the quiet room. It is called felony identity theft. The room went instantly horrifyingly silent. Chloe's smug smile vanished. I picked up the thick manila folder from the center of the table and dropped it right in front of my father. Open it, I demanded. My dad opened the folder with shaking hands. He stared at the printed credit alerts, the massive fraudulent loan documents with her clearly forged signature, and the copy of the official police report I had just filed. She stole my social security number to buy designer clothes and a luxury car, I said clearly, looking directly at my parents. She tried to ruin the mortgage on the house I am buying next week, and the police are currently waiting downstairs to arrest her for it. Chloe turned pale white. The shopping bags dropped from her hands, hitting the floor with a loud thud. You called the cops? She stammered, stepping back toward the door. Over a car? I was going to pay you back eventually. You are my sister. You can't do this to me. I looked at her with pure disgust. You are not my sister, I replied coldly. You are a selfish parasite, and I am finally done paying for you. My parents started to cry. My mother reached out, begging me to withdraw the police report. But then my dad looked at the massive loan amounts on the papers. He looked at Chloe, the daughter who had bankrupted his retirement, and then he looked at me. The harsh reality finally set in. No, my dad said quietly, stopping my mother. We are absolutely done. When the police knocked on my door 5 minutes later, my parents didn't say a single word to stop them. Chloe sobbed hysterically as she was led out of the apartment in shiny metal handcuffs, wearing the very designer coat she had illegally bought in my name. Because I had the official police report, the fraud alerts were quickly cleared by the bank, and my perfect credit score was fully restored. The dealership came and towed the stolen Mercedes away the very next morning. A week later, I signed the final papers and closed on my beautiful dream house. I didn't invite my parents to see it, and I certainly didn't leave a spare key under the mat. For the first time in my life, I am completely alone, and I have never been happier.